Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So I've been sitting on all of this recorded footage for God knows how long because stuff just keeps happening and delays my plans. But now it is finally time for me to delve into Mongil Star Dive, a brand new anime action RPGG, standing for action role-playing gacha game, with great visuals, a lot of comedic flair, and cute adorable monsters that could fit into your pocket. We're going to be taking a really good look at what the game is, its story, how it plays, gearing systems, time-gated progressions, and everything else that will give you a better idea of what you can expect from this upcoming title, and maybe get a better idea if this is a game that you'd like to sink a couple of 100 hours into. So without further ado, let's get into it. I was actually lucky enough to be selected to join their closed beta test to try things out, and what I found was pretty fun. In a gaming space so saturated with protagonists that have the personality and emotional range of a wet towel, Mongil Star Dive offers us something, or someone, I should say, quite different. Fair warning, the story section might end up being a bit too long, so feel free to use the timestamps to skip this section if story content is not of any interest to you. The game starts off as one might normally expect, with us impaling a crying girl, her still warm blood dripping from our stained hands. Did I skip a few pages? For some reason, the girl thanks us and heads towards the ominous looking hole in the sky, saying something about how the threads of fate must stitch together the wound of the world. Okay, seriously, what is up with this trend of gacha games and having a fake sky? She flies towards the cracked sky as she bids us goodbye and we wake up. Oh, so it was all a dream. Good, I'm not going to be locked up for murder. Meet Cloud and Verna, our MCs for this game. Cloud is the happy-go-lucky idiot, while Verna is the straight man, or straight woman in this comedic duo. They're adventurers, and they start off their journey by securing the most important necessity required for an adventure: breakfast. So we head off into the forest for some, completely humane foraging. Except things don't go as planned. It's here that we have our first boss encounter, and I kid you not, it's a giant pigman with a fork. We easily dispatch him and send him into the stratosphere. Oh, so he's the reason why there's going to be a giant hole in the sky. But that's not the main point. The main point is we've discovered a new type of monster in the form of this chonky, beady-eyed black cat who Cloud affectionately calls Nyanners. While they initially left the monster in the forest, they find that Nyanners follow them back to town, and thanks to Cloud's infatuation with the cat, they decide to keep it and register it with the guild. First off, we collect our reward for our commission, then we meet up with Hylia to register Nyanners. Hylia is very excited to see a new monster, to say the least. We leave Nyanners with her for a bit, and when we return, we can rename the cat to something else. Now, since I don't want any issues with copyright or stolen identities, I decided to switch the name to something else while trying to maintain the Nya aspect. Now, what do I name a cat-like creature that looks like the void of space? Can't call it a black hole because nyak hole doesn't sound that good. Also can't use the word void because nya doesn't fit. I got it. Nyabula. I am a naming genius. Now, after studying Nyabula for a bit, Hylia wants to demonstrate something to us, so she pulls out a wild monster and tells us to defeat it in front of the entire guild. Once defeated, its soul leaves its body to be sucked up by Nyabula. You know what? Maybe I should have called it Nyakhole instead. Sucking it in was only the first half of the process though, and the second half is, yeah, that. Basically, Nyabula is capable of taming monsters instantly by devouring them, a process that would normally take decades, or so we're told. So why are we being fed this particular information about our black cat? Well, it's because these monsters are now going to be part of our gear, and you know what that means? It's time for some very ethical endemic cleansing! Anyway, we pick up our next mission, and we are joined by a new character called Reyna, who is part of the Solar Knights. Wait a minute. Blonde female knight, dumbass MC who uses a bow, short-haired girl with an affinity for fire. Why do I feel like I'm playing Konosuba? All that's left is to have Aqua join the party. So our mission this time around is to check the monsters in the wilds as they have become overly aggressive lately for some reason. Our investigation, read that as complete monster genocide, has revealed to us that a lot of monsters have ingested a dark, malefic looking seed. Further investigation leads us to a hooded figure who seems to be the one feeding monsters these seeds. We chase him down, but he unfortunately gets away, leaving us to return to the Adventurers Guild with the seeds we found. It's here that we're met with Ophelia, an honorable but directionally challenged knight who found the same kind of seeds that we did. She requests an analysis, but any staff capable of such a feat are already way too busy, so the guild requires more proof before they'll call them in. Not being trusted at her words offends Ophelia, and she storms out of the guild hall. We chase after her, asking her to join us in our investigation, but she says she has other things to do and she will leave this seed problem to the guild. Except we run into her again, and again, and again. Yeah, she said she'd be heading north, but she ended up in the south side of the forest. I'm sure she meant to do that. From this point onward, Ophelia joins our quest and we end up taking on quite a few encounters together, from fighting the Slime King to saving a burning village from a goblin raid and even rebuilding said village. We can't rest just yet, however, as a new goblin raid is on the move. Their numbers are way too great, so we need to request reinforcements from the guild while Ophelia holds the line. We head back to the city and we call on the guild branch master Miller to ready a defense force. Meanwhile, he informs us that Frances should now be available with the seed analysis and that we should go find her. Frances is in the town square and she, oh dear lord, she barely leaves anything to the imagination now, doesn't she? Oh boy. That, and she doesn't seem to understand the concept of personal space and might be a little too willing to inject you with unknown and dubiously colored chemical substances, yes? Regardless, with this mission fulfilled, we return to Ophelia, who in an attempt to reduce casualties, is planning to infiltrate the enemy camp from behind. Of course, we can't let her do this all alone and head into the goblin camp together. Along the way, we meet a friendly goblin from a different, uninfected tribe who wants to help us. With his help, we carefully sneak into the goblin camp, find Taglock, the goblin leader, and promptly beat him to a pulp. With the boss defeated, we use a signal flare to call in the guild reinforcements and easily clean up the remaining leaderless goblin combatants. Now, back at the guild, we're ready to return to dealing with the seed problem. Since these seeds are negatively affecting nature and the wildlife, we're informed by Frances that there's a certain entity that would take great interest in them. That entity being none other than the Warden of Nature, Kustos. Kustos would always awaken when the forest was in danger and deal with whatever threats would rise up. This seed incident should be no different, so in an attempt to secure his help, we need to make contact with the White Wolf tribe. Also, I do love the contrast between Ophelia's no-nonsense and knightly nature and Frances's horny yet comedic antics. Anyway, we make for the forest again to find the White Wolf clan and are met with Height, the tribe's gatekeeper. He informs us that the tribe has been infected and that he will guide us to the hideout. As we make our way there, we cure any of the infected white wolves we see by making them barf their guts out. Eventually, we reach their camp, but the door can't be opened even with the gatekeeper on our side. So, Ophelia does what's most natural in situations like these and smashes the stone door open. There are barely any sane wolves left inside, so we end up drugging most of them with sleeping gas and taking out any stragglers. We make our way towards the deepest part of the cave where we find Lupe, the Wolfpack Alpha, who seems to be resisting the influence of the Dark Seed, but it's taking all of his willpower to do so, and even that is fading fast. To get the key he holds and open the door to Kustos, we have to defeat Lupe. He is not a boss to scoff at, however, as it takes the combined effort of the entire party to subdue him. But subdued him we have, and thanks to that, we're able to get the key and leave the White Wolf cave with the help of Height. Once outside, we once again encounter the hooded figure that was spreading the seeds, and this time around, we catch him. It's revealed that he's actually another adventurer and a part of the same guild as us. He even admits that spreading the seeds was part of a request. Since he has a lot of explaining to do, we bring the perpetrator to the guild so he can get a very hands-on interrogation from the branch head himself. After a few side quests to upgrade our levels, we're finally directed to the Natura Monastery, the place where Kustos supposedly lies dormant. The monastery is overtaken by violent infected roots, making the warden that much more difficult to find. We make our way down to the ruins, however, where we find a mirror that transports us to Kustos' lair. The key flies away from Frances and into Kustos, awakening him. Unfortunately, he's already been infected and we have to take him down. Obviously, we're not too happy with killing a guardian deity that was supposed to help us in our fight against the corrupting influence, but we keep our spirits up, hoping that maybe Miller will be able to come up with new leads for us to follow and solve this problem once and for all.
それはわからん。
Yeah, there's no hope of that happening because this is where the story for this closed beta test ends, leaving us with nothing else to do than to go ahead and keep playing the game to test out whatever else it might have to offer. This is actually the perfect time to start talking about the game's combat system. As mentioned before, Mongil Star Dive is an action RPG in a similar vein as Genshin Impact, and since that's the case, you'll be able to recognize quite a few elements. Each character has an element and its own combo strings, skill, and ultimate. You'll be able to make teams of maximum 3 characters that you can quick swap through and bring into any adventure. You've also got a sprint and a dodge that is linked to a stamina bar. So far so good, right? Well, here's where things get a little different. Normally, dodging works pretty much the same as it does in Genshin Impact. However, when this yellow marker appears on the boss, it allows you to use a dodge to slow down time for a second and deliver a powerful counterattack. It also has the added benefit of resetting your quick swap cooldown. Now, quick swapping isn't just changing your character. In fact, that's not what you want to use quick swap for. What you do want is the sweet switch skill that comes with it. Every time you quick swap to another character, you'll trigger their switch skill, which will have different effects for each character. Some skills can just have a simple effect like dealing damage, but some characters have something a little extra, like leaving a field on the ground that enhances elemental damage whenever you swap off of them. It does seem like this will eventually lead to incentivizing players to form teams not only based on matching elemental affinities, but also around creating certain rotations to buff your team. The upside is that you don't really have a meter that you need to fill up to trigger these effects. All you have to do is wait for the cooldown to finish and you can trigger it at your leisure. Now, since we're on the topic of character abilities, every character has 5 parts to their kit: basic attacks, a special skill, a switch skill, which we've already covered, an ultimate, and a passive trait. Basic attacks are just that, your basic combo string. However, some characters like Cloud, Reyna, and Mina have a special resource meter above their HP that allows them to trigger variant attacks. In Cloud's case, he uses these diamonds to continuously fire arrows. Reyna's energy orbs allow her to charge up a big heavy attack, and Mina has 3 flame orbs that lets her dash around while attacking, which culminates in a big flaming slam dunk. Special skills can be anything from throwing a big fireball to putting down a field that enhances your basic attacks, or just bringing down your sword really hard. Ultimates are self-explanatory at this point. It's the signature move of each character, and based on what I've seen from them so far, they're just a big damage button. The character that had the most unique ultimate was Mina, since her ultimate creates a clone of herself that mimics every single attack that you do. As for passive traits, those are basically just core parts of your kit, like how Cloud earns his diamond resource at set intervals, or how Verna and Ophelia imbue their basic attacks with their respective elements after using a skill, counter, or ultimate. Now, from what I've experienced in the CBT, rotations aren't a thing yet. They might be in the future, but as of right now, the game allows you to swap characters around however you want without forcing you into playing them in a certain order. The combat feels fun, if clunky at times when you get knocked down or when your dodge just doesn't seem to register. Speaking of combat, bosses are pretty simple. I haven't felt like bosses are doing anything spectacular in terms of mechanics. They'll just sit there, throw a couple of attacks at you, and maybe a few special skills here and there like Amon's dash attacks or his windshield. Yes, some bosses will have these phases where they're powering up to deal massive damage, and you have to interrupt them either by dealing enough damage within a time frame or by applying a specific element to them a certain number of times. Even so, their simplistic nature doesn't stop me from finding these fights entertaining. They feel like actual boss fights where I get to interact with the boss mechanics and not a fight where I'm mostly ignoring the boss in an attempt to do my rotation uninterrupted. At least for now. Who knows if we'll end up in the same place as Wuthering Waves or Genshin Impact once we reach Mongil's endgame. Oh, one special feature that I forgot to mention regarding bosses is that they have a stagger bar underneath their HP bar. You have to fill this bar up with your attacks, and once full, Nebula will tackle the enemy, prompting your character to seize the opportunity and tie them up with this thread that every character seems to have but is never properly explained. Doing so will trigger a burst state where your quick swap cooldowns are significantly shorter throughout the duration, allowing you to repeatedly trigger those switch skills. The one thing that I'm not sure about is whether or not these bosses have lower defenses while in this state. Moving on to exploration, it's probably best not to expect too much from it, or if you're like me and you're burnt out from all of the giant open world sandboxes, then keep your expectations high. The world of Mongil is rather small. There are no big zones for you to dart around, collecting chests along the way. Every map is pretty much linear. You may come to a fork in the road at times, but you can rest assured that one will lead you to a dead end with some resources, a boss, or a chest, while the other is the main path. Waypoints are dotted across these areas to facilitate easy travel, and you might end up finding yourself with a little puzzle here and there that won't take too much of your time to figure out and get some extra rewards. There's barely any verticality in this game, so don't expect to have to find some contrived way up a slope because there is no jump button. If you're allowed to climb your way up anywhere, the way will be visibly marked with these white arrows that either make you jump automatically or have you use the wire to grapple up. You will want to keep revisiting these locations, as not only will you want to farm monsters to add them to your collection, but you'll also want to complete bounties that send you out into the world to hunt for specific targets. These bounties will net you experience, money, and character upgrade tokens, of which you will need a lot of. You can only complete about 10 of these bounties a day, so make sure that you accept only the hard difficulty ones, as those will get you the most rewards and are relatively easy to complete. Now, I touched upon this lightly before, but the gearing system is composed of 6 elements: a 4-piece equipment section represented by helm, gloves, chest piece, and boots, an artifact, and a monster link. Yes, you've seen it, you dread it. Welcome back to Random Substat Hell, everyone, where you'll be eternally farming for that god roll piece for the remainder of the game. Thankfully, it seems that only the 4 equipment pieces use this particular system. Of course, I only had low rarity equipment, so I didn't have that many substats available, but if I had to make an educated guess about what the maximum amount of substats will be, I would say 4. Why 4? Well, just because that's the maximum for Hoyo titles, which seems to be the main inspiration for Mongil. On the other hand, the artifacts and monster links seem to have set stats that that will increase through leveling up, but you will have to pay attention to your monsterling's traits, which add another factor of randomness for you to keep track of. Monsterlings come with 2 traits, each with its own rarity, gray being the most common and orange being the rarest and most sought after. If you want to have the perfect monsterling, you're going to have to engage in some high-scale monster annihilation to get the required traits. Thankfully though, that won't be your only option. Here's where Nebula and the Monster Codex come in handy. First off, Nebula is capable of fusing 2 monsters together for a random chance to increase its rarity. Not only that, the resulting monsterling will randomly inherit 2 of the traits from the sacrificed monsters. So if you have 2 different monsters, one with a good crit chance trait and another with a good crit damage trait, you could fuse those together and hope that both stats will end up on the resulting monster. Of course, knowing how our luck tends to go in games like these, the chances of that happening are rather low. Thankfully, there's an option to lock the traits we want so that we can guarantee they get through the fusion process. This will require the use of some premium salmon puree that can be bought from the shop for a high price, but I'm not sure how readily available this item will be once the game launches. The Monster Codex is also an important feature that you'll need to take into account. It serves as a log for all of the monsters you've captured on your journey, but the real feature here is mastering each codex entry. To master an entry on a certain monster, you need to capture that monster for a total of 11 times. You'll unlock more entries in the observation log at certain capture milestones, giving you more information on the monsters like elemental type, weakness, and the story entry. These are all nice and all, but not the main point of mastering. You want to master as many monsters as possible, as each capture increases Nebula's experience by 500. Yes, Nebula has its own leveling system that it needs to progress through. The higher the level, the better the benefits of monster fusion. Sure, we're not getting any good fusion results when we're just starting off our journey, but with more and more levels, we get a higher chance of getting that legendary result we're all chasing. Okay, on to the serious stuff. Everything up until now has been sunshine and rainbows, but let's not forget that Mongil is a gacha game. So, what's the catch? Well, there's not much to say here since the gacha mechanic isn't implemented in the game as of yet. During the CBT, we unlocked characters through certain missions, but what I can tell you about though is the game's time-gated progression. In this game, we have keys. This will be the stamina equivalent that we will be managing with a maximum cap of 50. No, I'm not joking, it's really that small. Now, of course, this is a CBT where mostly everything is subject to change, including everything else that I mentioned in this video. But why would we get such a small amount of stamina when the purpose of the CBT is to test everything? One would think that limiting it to such an extent would be counterproductive. I just hope this isn't an indication that 50 is the intended maximum for launch day as well. That and the refresh rate is, well, it's 1 key per minute. But with a key cap of 50, that basically meant that you'd have to log in every hour to not overcap. I really hope they will increase the maximum so that we can get some breathing room, because no matter how good a game is, I won't be able or willing to play it every hour of every day. As for what you can use these keys on, you've got dungeons. These dungeons can give you experience books to level up your characters, artifacts, or materials to level up your skills. Every dungeon pits you against a boss that you have to defeat, and it costs you 10 keys. The other activity you can spend keys on is called Conquest, where you'll have to take on major bosses for a chance to earn monsterlings, breakthrough materials, and legendary equipment. Conquests will cost you 15 keys per clear. Now, what I don't like about Conquest is that it limits you to 3 clears per day. This probably wouldn't be that big of a deal if what it offered wasn't as essential. Breakthrough materials are the only way for you to increase the level cap of your characters, allowing you to tackle harder and more rewarding challenges. The problem with Conquest is that you don't get to choose what breakthrough material you're farming. I was intending to break through Ophelia because I liked her, but when I cleared my first conquest, I was rewarded with wind breakthrough pieces. I was lucky enough to have unlocked Esther, the assassin maid who is wind aspected, so I could still use those, but what if I didn't? Or what if I get constantly unlucky and just can't get the required materials to break through a specific character? This aspect definitely needs some changing because there is no way to justify not being able to target specific upgrade materials. It's just pointless time gating and not fun at all. There are also in-game shops that sell you some of these required items for in-game currency. Things like the salmon puree or conquest entry tickets or breakthrough materials or even keys. I don't know if this iteration of the shop will make it to launch or not because it feels like selling these items for in-game currency, even at this exorbitant cost, might be too good to be true. Wow, I can't believe I've reached the point where my spider senses are tingling if I'm not getting shafted by a gacha game. But yeah, that's Mongil Star Dive. As you most likely could tell from what I've been presenting up until this point, this game doesn't take itself too seriously. The story itself is focused on keeping things very lighthearted and comedic to bring you an overall fun and relaxing experience. There's no dark themes to be had here, no villains with traumatic backstories, just enjoy the jokes, beat a monster or two, and get some gear for your trouble. It's even funnier when I realize that throughout my entire time playing the closed beta, I have not met a single playable character outside of Cloud that is male. This guy is literally covered in women from head to toe. You can tell that this is most likely going to be the direction they'll take for future character releases as well, so don't go expecting too many male characters to show up. But never mind that, I want to hear from you. I've spent all this time creating this video trying to be as comprehensive as possible so that you can get all of the relevant information regarding Mongil Star Dive, its gameplay, and its systems. For what purpose? Why, none other than to ask you to share with me what your thoughts are on the game. Is this something that will interest you? Will you give it a shot when it comes out? Or maybe there are some aspects of the game that don't really speak to you or flat out turn you off from trying the game. Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like and a comment to help me out with the algorithm. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Until then, have a good one.